Star Trek didn't just shape science fiction, it helped define it. But behind the polished decks of the Enterprise lies a universe of bizarre, forgotten, and controversial truths. Today we're going boldly into the strangest corners of Trek history. You know Spock and Kirk. But do you know the secret pilot, the unmade spin-offs, the backstage injuries, or the origins of the Vulcan salute? Before Star Trek became the global sci-fi franchise we know today, it almost died on arrival. The original pilot, titled The Cage, was shot in 1965 and featured a very different captain, Jeffrey Hunter as Christopher Pike, and a very different crew. The only familiar face? Leonard Nimoy as Spock, though even he appeared more emotional and less restrained than fans would later know him. NBC ultimately rejected the pilot, citing a lack of warmth and diversity. But creator Gene Roddenberry wasn't done. He successfully convinced the network to give him another chance. And when Hunter declined to return, Roddenberry cast William Shatner as Captain James T. Kirk. That decision would change television forever. Now let's warp ahead to a forgotten spin-off attempt. In the second season, Roddenberry co-wrote an episode called Assignment, Earth. On the surface, it seemed like just another Trek adventure. But in truth, it was a backdoor pilot for a new series starring Robert Lansing as the mysterious Gary Seven and Terry Garr as his secretary, Roberta Lincoln. The plan was to launch a new show about time-traveling agents protecting Earth from itself. However, things fell apart behind the scenes. Terry Garr later revealed her deep discomfort on set. Roddenberry reportedly kept demanding that her skirt be shortened, insisting on adjusting it himself. The unprofessional and inappropriate behavior soured her experience, and Garr distanced herself from Star Trek for the rest of her career. The pilot was never picked up, and Assignment, Earth remains a relic of what might have been. Speaking of hidden histories, few know that before he wore the Starfleet badge, William Shatner was already diving into bold and difficult roles. In 1962's The Intruder, he played a racist provocateur stirring up violence in a southern town. The film was controversial and ahead of its time, and Shatner's portrayal was deeply unsettling. He also starred in the legendary Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, playing a paranoid airline passenger convinced that a monster is sabotaging the plane. These intense performances showcased his acting range, and they gave a glimpse of the commanding, emotionally intense presence he'd later bring to Captain Kirk. Then there's the case of Harry Mudd, the lovable con man of the Trek universe. Roger Carmel played the role in 2 episodes of the original series and became a fan favorite. What many don't know is that there were serious plans to build an entire spin-off around him. Roddenberry and NBC discussed turning Mudd into the star of a new show, one centered on interstellar scams and space piracy. Unfortunately, Roddenberry was overwhelmed with the main series and never followed through. Later, Mudd was considered for Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and The Next Generation, but conflicting schedules and production delays kept the character grounded. What could have been a comedy-tinged Trek spin-off faded into history. Not all weird facts are fun. Some are downright dangerous. During the filming of the episode The Apple, the crew set up a scene where Spock throws a rock that explodes, but the explosion was far stronger than expected. The blast knocked actors off their feet and sent them rushing to a studio doctor. DeForest Kelley, Dr. McCoy, suffered permanent ringing in his ears. Leonard Nimoy also sustained long-term hearing damage. William Shatner, who already had mild hearing loss, found his condition worsening after the blast. He eventually became an advocate for hearing health and worked with the American Tinnitus Association to spread awareness. Behind the scenes, Star Trek could be as dangerous as an actual space mission. Sometimes iconic moments come from deeply personal experiences. Leonard Nimoy, the man behind Spock, created the famous Vulcan salute from a memory burned into his childhood. As a boy in an Orthodox Jewish synagogue, Nimoy watched as rabbis performed a ritual blessing with their fingers split into a V shape. He was warned not to look, but curiosity won. The visual stuck with him. Years later, when Star Trek introduced Spock's alien culture, Nimoy suggested the gesture as a fitting greeting, something foreign yet dignified. Paired with the phrase, "live long and prosper," it became a cornerstone of Vulcan identity. That single idea, rooted in ancient tradition, is now one of science fiction's most recognizable symbols. Dr. McCoy's famous quip, "I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer," logically became a comedic staple of the show. But the phrase wasn't new. Its origin can be traced back to the 1933 film The Kennel Murder Case, where a character shouts, "I'm a doctor, not a magician." Roddenberry and his writers borrowed the idea, but it was DeForest Kelley who made it a signature line. His dry wit, frustration, and impeccable timing turned a borrowed phrase into one of the most quoted gags in sci-fi history. Over time, the line was playfully adapted to fit increasingly absurd scenarios, adding levity to the otherwise high-stakes missions. When it comes to fandom, the Star Trek writers assumed William Shatner's Captain Kirk would be the show's primary heartthrob. He was handsome, confident, and adventurous, a natural fit. But the audience had different plans. It was Spock, the emotionally repressed Vulcan with the sharp eyebrows and calm voice, who stole the show, especially among women. Leonard Nimoy received enormous amounts of fan mail, much of it from female admirers who were drawn to Spock's mystery and depth. The writers hadn't seen it coming. The quiet, logical science officer outshone the daring captain in fan devotion, flipping network expectations on their head. Hey, quick check-in. Are you enjoying these weird Star Trek facts so far? If you're loving the deep cuts and surprising details, go ahead and drop a like. Now back to the next strange fact you probably missed. Not every moment in Trek history is warm and fuzzy. In 1986, William Shatner hosted Saturday Night Live and performed a skit mocking Star Trek conventions. In character, he told fans to get a life, suggesting they had taken things too far by obsessing over a TV show. The sketch was meant as satire, but many fans didn't find it funny. They felt insulted, as though Shatner was ridiculing the very people who had kept the show alive for decades. The backlash was swift. Shatner later clarified that the bit was written in good humor, but the incident became a symbol of the complicated relationship between actors and their devoted fan base. Budget constraints often bring out the most creative solutions, or the most desperate. The original Star Trek series had a budget of just $193,000 per episode, which may sound like a lot, but it was tight even by 1960s standards. That's around $1.3 million today, still well below what modern sci-fi episodes cost. To cut corners, the studio hired a non-union shop to make the crew uniforms, which was technically illegal. To avoid scrutiny, the wardrobe had to be smuggled onto the set. No labels, no receipts, no paper trail. While the actors were exploring strange new worlds, someone behind the scenes was quietly breaking labor laws. And now for the bonus fact, one that shows just how much Star Trek owed to Leonard Nimoy's creative vision. In the episode The Enemy Within, the script called for Spock to knock out an aggressive duplicate of Kirk with a simple punch. But Nimoy objected. He believed Spock, being a highly logical and disciplined alien, wouldn't resort to brute force. So he invented the Vulcan nerve pinch, a subtle, elegant technique where a precise squeeze to the neck would instantly incapacitate someone. It was pure science fiction invention, and Shatner sold it with a dramatic, perfectly timed collapse. That simple change added another layer to Spock's persona and became a signature move throughout the franchise. From unaired pilots to shady costume deals, from spiritual inspirations to real injuries, Star Trek wasn't just a journey through space. It was a chaotic, creative, and sometimes controversial voyage behind the scenes. These 10 facts prove that the story of Star Trek is as strange as any alien world they ever visited. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Was it the unaired pilot? The fan backlash? The hidden injuries? Let us know in the comments below. We read them all and love hearing from fellow fans. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Star Trek's weirder side, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss a new mission.